Hello and welcome to the walk-off, everybody. I'm Scott Belford, joined by the best intern co-host in the biz, Joel LaFlamme. Hey, call me on TikTok. And dude, we have all sorts of things to get to as the All-Star break approaches. So we will talk the fact the Jays are, I don't know, can we get away with saying hot? They have definitely won
Yes.
2 series in a row. It is hot for the Blue Jays, anyways. So taking that Mariners series, taking the series against the Giants as they go into the final series of baseball before the All-Star break. So they're
Yeah.
facing off against the Diamondbacks. We'll talk the fact that Kevin Kiermaier was put on waivers in the middle of the game yesterday, which was an interesting timing for the front office to do it. I don't know how you feel about it, but we'll dig into it. Ernie Clement is about as hot as they come. It's funny. Every time Ernie gets regular playing time, Joel, he's really quite a good player. Funny how
Yes.
that works out. Yes, sitting on the bench, not as much. So we'll dive into that. First trade to drop when it comes to the Blue Jays. So I'm gonna throw that out there now. Give you a few minutes to let it ruminate in that brain of yours, and then everyone on Grounds Crew too, drop your comments below because I am really curious. We know the Jays are going to sell. There's no doubt. Heck, they could sweep the Diamondbacks. I think that trajectory is still going to be the case. So, not counting Kevin Kiermaier, who is the first real piece on this Blue Jays team to move? Would it be Danny Jansen? Could we see somebody take uh Turner? Could it be Kikuchi? So we'll get into that. You save that. I know I want to dive into it right now too, but we'll save that. The All-Star game and home run derby right around the corner, and so is the draft. So I did want to pick your brain on your feeling on if it's best to go with organizational needs or if baseball just doesn't really allow that as much. And I know we did touch on this in mailbag, but I did want to really dive in if the Angels' way of doing thing is completely ridiculous, or maybe there is some reasoning behind it, depending if you're taking a college player, maybe a little bit older, a little bit more developed, and what way you want to go. I know we both kind of lean on the you take the best player available. It's baseball, and you're probably even best case scenario going to need to take 2 years to develop them, but we'll touch on that. Arizona series is here. We'll dive into that, the pitching matchups, and thoughts on that series. So, Joel, I know you don't have a ton of time here, so we are going to just dive right in. Normally, we wind up unfocused and all over the place. I swear, everyone, we're going to do our best to not to, although I know that this is going to wind up 30 minutes in and we're going to be like, yeah, and here we are completely derailed. Uh, 2 series in a row, buddy.
Mhm.
And honestly, a lot of the offense has come from the bottom of the lineup. What are your thoughts on the roster construction lately? Not so much construction as in like what the front office has done, more just what John Schneider is running out there, which is giving a little bit more time to these Buffalo boys, which there's not a lot of choices. Guys are getting injured. We're seeing Bo miss some time here. I know he just had an MRI on his calf and it's a minor strain. Everything seems fine, but he is probably going to miss this last series here before the All-Star break. Where are you at on Spencer Horwitz, Davis Schneider, Ernie Clement, Leo Jimenez? Are these guys that we're going to see a lot of in the last half of the year?
Well, I would think so. What I think is if we were truly meant to contend this year, you wouldn't see that many of them. But when it comes to like Spencer, Ernie and Davis, especially, like Davis is slumping a little bit now, but the grit, the style of play, the show up every day, and I've I've been really excited of what I've seen, especially out of Ernie and Spencer, that if Ernie can tap into a little bit of pop, and that was a heck of a home run he hit the other day, the one
It
low and
was.
inside where That was there was no, I don't know how many people hit that ball out. So that was really quite eye-opening that there's a little bit of pop in both of their bats, which is supposed to be the thing that is kind of like,
is lacking. I know
yeah,
we saw Spencer go deep last night, and then we saw like you mentioned, Clement do the same thing a couple days ago. In 64 plate appearances, Joel, Ernie Clement has 20 hits. 5 of them are doubles. 4 of them are home runs. He has 12 RBIs. He's hitting 313 and an OPS just under 900. This is a dude that is technically a utility player. This is a guy who doesn't see enough time on the field, in my opinion. I'm almost at the point of just put him in. Let's see what we've got. Let's see if Ernie Clement can be a slightly above average everyday player, and that would be such a success in my opinion. And I know you touched on Davis Schneider slumping a little bit lately. There's a lot of people that are calling for him to be sent back down, which personally I think is a little crazy. I mean, this is a dude who's not even a full 1,500 plate appearances into his major league career. Of course, he's been hot and cold. Everyone's like, he's slumping or he's killing it. There's no consistency. I hate to break it to you. I mean, that's pretty much fucking baseball, no?
100%. 100%. Streakiness is, like I said, I don't even really partake in streakiness. I look at the end of I look at what your baseball card says at the end of
Of the
162
year.
games. And because there's highs and lows throughout, and I think that was something that we were trying to search for consistency in our offense, right? We were trying to find, we didn't want streaky players like Teo and Lourdes. When I really feel like just get a lot of streaky players, just get a lot of players that get real hot, because when they're real hot, they carry a lineup, as opposed to, I stay about 270 all season is very different from a guy who's like 350 one month and 250 the next month. It's if you can manage that so 3 guys are hot at all times, 3 guys are cool down and slumping, and 3 guys are kind of right in the middle, then
And
you're in good shape.
that's where you do have to cross your fingers. But again, I don't really believe that there's guys that are more streaky than others. There are obviously dudes with the higher peaks and the higher valleys. And you hope that when you assemble a lineup, they're not all slumping at the same time, which is something that we saw in April with this Blue Jays team. Was like it was like not one of these guys was hot. But that only lasts so long. And I think you just need to weather the storm when you're in moments like that, because overreacting, and let's say like this, just to go back to Davis Schneider, I really do believe that he has done enough to prove that he needs the time to readjust. He has impressed to the point where I think he is, pretty safe to say, a slightly above average everyday player. And you
Mhm.
know what happens with slightly above average everyday players? They have stints where they are below average. That's how baseball
Absolutely.
works. And so if you're going to just every time there's a slump, you're going to knee jerk reaction to these guys that are new to the big leagues like Davis Schneider, and you're going to send them back down. It is so hard for him to readjust because he's going to go back down to AAA. He's going to rake. That's the difference between the bigs and AAA baseball.
Yeah, and it's not just that. It's when do you get a stretch of the elite pitching in Major League Baseball? When are you up against a bunch of guys who actually have your number because of the stuff that they throw, right? Like there are situations where you don't hit this mix so good. You don't hit it coming from that out of that arm slot so good. Oh, the next 3 guys that we face, we're going from a number one starter in game 3 of this series to a number one starter in game 1 of this series, and then a 2 starter. So over a 3-game stretch, we're facing pretty much all stars. Like those moments come, and then you get a stretch where you go play Oakland, Kansas City, Detroit for 9 games in a row, and you see the bottom end of the staff for all 3 teams. And all of a sudden, hey, over your last 9 games, this guy's hitting 360. It's like it's
Yeah.
situations like that, right? So it's hard to judge a player in a slumpy moment because there's so many things that can account for that. And it's at this time in a player's career that they really need to figure things out here. They don't need to figure things out in the minors.
And
They need to figure
I
out
mean,
Major League Baseball.
it's pretty well known that if you don't have 1,500 ABs in the big leagues yet, there's still a lot of adjusting and readjusting to go on. And Davis Schneider's only about halfway there. So, I mean, yeah, they and what's funny is Davis has been coming out of it the last few days too. He's looked a lot better. I think that he gets in trouble when he overextends himself, and I mean this is just a blanket statement for most players, but when he starts swinging outside of his approach and outside of the zone, you get in trouble, and that goes up and down this Blue Jays lineup. Curious where you're at on the Blue Jays taking this series to get against the Giants. Was there anything to take out of that outside of they put up some offense and their bullpen didn't implode?
Anything to take away from the series as opposed to us just like I said, I feel the continued success of the young guys is really meaningful because we we're wondering what next year is now,
Mm-hmm.
right? We're wondering if because there's still this belief that if you don't trade Bo and Vladdy, that you can run back a potential contender, right? And that's this really hard place to be is like
The
the,
middle.
there's a
Ugh.
fraction of the window is open and you're just like getting this little breeze and you could just go outside. You probably have to jump, but like yeah, it's a situation where we have to make kind of a concrete decision of are we rebuilding or do we still believe that this team is capable of competing on the highest level with just some subtle off-season tweaks. I personally don't think that that is where we are. I think that we need to make the hard decision on this team, make the trade so that the low point doesn't last as long because like you could save yourself a year if you deal guys now and start the rebuild process now. But if we drag it out another season and a half, um, I'm not going to be too excited, especially if we've got these guys at the helm. So I like to see the opportunities given to the young players because I really feel like you've got to move on. You've got to move on from what this team is right now, and those guys are going to be your core for
And
whatever 2025.
what's really frustrating for Jays fans right now is that Ross Atkins and even Mark Shapiro to an extent are in mega salesman mode with this Rogers front office and this Rogers committee that holds their jobs in their hand, right? So there's no doubt in my mind that Ross Atkins up there doing a little song and dance about how that window is still open and Bo and Vlad, and we can't give up on this team quite yet. Don't give up on me quite yet, right? So there's a lot of lip service just to keep their jobs. But that said, things are starting to happen, okay? And I mean, Kevin Kiermaier being put on irrevocable waivers yesterday during the game
During the game.
was quite eye-opening. Like, and this is all a money thing. This is about getting under the luxury tax. So if the Jays stay over the CBT a second straight year, they'll have to pay 30% on all overages. So anything that's
Yeah.
over that I think it's 232 million is the tax line right now. The Jays are 10 million over on that. And then if they are over on it this year, if they go over again next year, they need to pay 50%. So what the Blue Jays now, if they can get under it this year, it resets it to 20%. And so they can go over and not worry about spending quite as much money next year. That is obviously what they were attempting to do with Kevin Kiermaier, who is still owed just over $4 million on his $10.5 million salary. What is happening is he's on waivers. And if there is a team out there that would like to add Kevin, they take his money, is basically what it is.
Yeah.
I don't like how it went down personally. I would have far preferred for them to have, like, they talked to Kevin Kiermaier after the game. He didn't know. He didn't know before the game. He said all the right things, but you had to feel for him. I mean, basically, the team was just like, fuck right off. Not that he has performed to a level that is adequate, not that his bat has done almost anything this year, but it's still a rough spot for a seasoned veteran to be in, a guy who has poured his heart and soul into Toronto, a favorite of the fan base. You would think they could show, and I know this is part of the game, but I don't understand the difference between sitting him down and talking to him 2 hours after the game rather than just like doing it mid game. It seems like a weird timing. I don't know if there was some sort of under the wire thing they had to do where they were hours away. Again, it just felt weird. And it does make you wonder, is this enough a part of the business where other players will just be like, yeah, lots of organizations would do that? Or do you think that there is a little bit of a red flag with other players wanting to come to Toronto and looking at this front office and being like, I don't really like the way they do business?
Yeah, I find it rather tough because I don't know if there's a rule that states that you have to get these types of moves in by a certain time in the day so that it becomes, it's like, oh, we have to get it in by the end of the business day, or I don't think that that's the case.
Yeah.
And it just seems it's just a tough situation. Like there's going to be people who want Kevin Kiermaier. There's going to be plenty of teams that, hey, we get Gold Glove caliber defense to come off our bench. There's going to be lots of interest there. The weird thing is that it seems to be happening with it happened with Biggio. It happened now with Kiermaier. Like, I'm really shocked that there was at no point a way to package any of these guys, that they have to be released, that we have to find a home for them through the last possible avenue. I don't like that. I feel like there's, well, why couldn't you're telling me that it doesn't seem like anyone has any interest in dealing with us right now either,
Mhm.
which is strange. It's like,
And listen, I will say this, Joel. There's a lot of people who have no sympathy for Kevin Kiermaier. They say he's being paid very well. This is the business. Don't even worry about it. There'll be no hard feelings. I mean, there's a little bit of truth to the amount of money he's making, I guess. He is being well compensated to go through the ringer, but I don't know, man. I don't really care how rich you are. I think you're still a human and you still have feelings. And like, if you feel slighted, you're going to feel slighted, whether you make a bunch of money to feel slighted or not, anyways. So I would hate for a guy who spoke so highly of Toronto
mhm.
and was so thrilled to be here to leave with a bitter taste in his mouth. They always talk in free agency about guys reaching out to other buddies, right? Dudes who have been there, guys they know that have played within the organization that they're thinking of going to. And the last thing you want is some free agent that we're trying to lure to the Blue Jays to call Kevin Kiermaier up and be like, bro, remember when we played together in Tampa Bay? I'd love to hear your thoughts on Toronto. And he's like, you know what? And listen, who knows? Again, everyone, I mean, I was talking about this on Twitter and everyone, there were lots of people who were like, look at his quotes. He said things like, they told me maybe I can go to a contender. Yeah, like Kevin Kiermaier's not a fucking idiot. He's going to give the lip service so that the 29 other teams out there still want him, right? He's 34 years old on a 1-year contract. This isn't just about this year. This is about saving face and looking like you're still a good teammate and that you still want the best for the team. So is Kevin Kiermaier going to go out and actually roast the Blue Jays on a quote unquote business move? No, that would be the stupidest thing ever to do because he still wants to sign a contract next year. Now, can he get $10 million again? No. But Kevin Kiermaier still got some baseball in him. Maybe someone will sign him for $5 million. I mean,
Absolutely.
the Marlins gave Tim Anderson $5 million to basically just walk away midseason. So there's going to be people out there who see value in Kevin Kiermaier's glove. And for him to not put a black mark on his career by in a press conference saying how he actually feels, like I don't know. I just don't buy that Kevin Kiermaier's fine and just accepted this as part of the business. I think that he was offended. I mean, the team basically was like, listen, you're not worth $4.5 million to us. And he's not, by the way. I know he's not. But we're still talking just the peripherals on this whole thing and the feelings that go with it, because to just dismiss the emotions that are attached to this is a little silly, right? Like again, it does go down to players talk. And is Kiermaier going to say good things about Toronto? I don't know.
No, I don't know either. And you have to say these things. You have to. You want to keep playing this year. He wants to win a World Series. He wants to be on a contender. And you're telling me that the Yankees are it's tough to deal to the Yankees, but um, a team like the Phillies who have a short porch for lefties,
Yeah.
and you need all of these contender teams need a solid defensive player to give their starters a day off and to come in defensively at the end of the game to give you that added defensive bonus. He's still got it. He's still got the ability to run out there and go get him in the outfield. And so yeah, I don't understand why you would just pull out all the air out of your tires and make yourself look, unappealing when right now you're on the market. You're literally on the dating market. You want to
And
trim yourself
maybe
up.
we're wrong, Joel. Maybe we are wrong. And Kevin Kiermaier was not upset by this in the least. In fact, maybe he was even excited that he might get to go to a contender. Although it did feel weird that they didn't talk to him first and that they couldn't just wait 3 hours. Like we're
Yeah.
talking hours here. We're not talking like weeks or up against the trade deadline. We're talking 3 weeks out of the trade deadline in the middle of a game that you could have waited a few hours. Again,
Mhm.
I don't and please, I would love to hear from the grounds crew. Drop your comments below. How did you feel about the Kevin Kiermaier being put on waivers scenario mid-game? Did you feel like it was weird? Am I overblowing this? We could literally be overblowing it because you don't know, you don't know. This is all speculation about how a player feels, but it just seemed really weird at the time.
Oh, absolutely. And it's just trading is one thing. Finding out that you're fundamentally being released is another. And it's like I don't mind finding out in the middle of the game, hey, you're going to a contender. Oh, tell me. But this was, yeah, it just felt like you could have dealt with it earlier in the day or later after the game and not in the game. You want him to
Mm-hmm.
focus on the game.
Taking a left turn here, I do want to talk Kevin Gausman really quick with you, Joel, because I'm curious on your thoughts about his road and home splits, which are
Yes.
literally insane, dude. I didn't know there was this kind of gap. I saw this stat just recently. I knew that he was pitching far better on the road. It's just I didn't know that it was like a 5 ERA difference, right? So on the road, he has a 2.31 ERA and is one of the best pitchers in baseball. At home, he has a 7.19 ERA and is one of the worst pitchers in baseball. It is wild. The disparity in those numbers. And I mean, Kevin Gausman looked really good yesterday. In fact, he looked really good his last two outings, both on the road and both done in very different fashions. He absolutely minced up that Seattle Mariners lineup, striking out almost 10, I think it was. I need to go back and double check. It might be 8, but still, he had a bunch of Ks. I mean, everyone has a bunch of Ks against the Mariners, so it's not like we should be touting our guns and shooting them in the air and blowing up our fireworks and stuff, but very dominant outing, 7 innings from from Kevin Gausman. And then last night goes about it a completely different way. Now, obviously, the Giants are not a strikeout team, but he still completely dominated that game. Another 7 innings. And he did it in an interesting way, Joel. He threw 12 sinkers, which is the most he's thrown that pitch in 4 years. In fact, he only threw 18 of his 98 pitches as his splitter, his go-to pitch, relying mostly on that four-seam fastball. And this stood out to me only because I know he's been struggling with his splitter. So there's two ways to look at it. Number one, you can look at it as like he adjusted. He did what he had to do. And obviously there's truth to that. Are you a little worried that his splitter isn't getting the outs that it was last year? Are you at all concerned that it's possible that this two-pitch pitcher, who obviously is working really hard on adding more pitch selections within his repertoire, is it possible the league's got that splitter figured out all of a sudden?
Yeah, it's a very vertical approach, right? It's fastballs up, splitter down, right? It goes like this or it goes like this. There's no this, there's no this. It's just this or this. So technically, just guessing, you've probably got, so slightly more fastballs than splitters. So when it's two pitches, you probably got a 60% chance to guess right if you're hunting fastball, right? That doesn't play too well on deception.
Mm-hmm.
The pitch, the comboing of them both is very, very effective. We've seen it over the last 2 years. But when you're able to spit on the splitter, when you're able to ignore it and attack the fastball, obviously, then you're just attacking a straight pitch. You're attacking a pitch that doesn't move. It's if you can get the velo down, which everybody in this league can hit 97, at 96.
Mm-hmm.
There's not much deception. So to have that sinker that tails in a bit on righties is very, very important. We see the effect that it has on us when you get that tailing in ball and you get the ground ball double plays, you get those weakly hit balls to third, you get swing and misses on balls on your hands, and then it just plays up everything better. We've got some lateral movement. So I'm worried that, but splitter is always a finicky pitch. It's blisters, it's all sorts of situations. How is your hand coping? Are you gripping the ball right? Is the ball good for throwing splitters today? There's so many different like little elements to that pitch, and it can be finicky. And right now it is. So he's doing whatever he can to try to stay competitive on the mound. And it's good to see him going to another pitch, able to go to another pitch. And I think if you can have even a below average or an average slider and a below average sinker, it's just a different look. It's just a different look, and it really allows you to get back to your dominant pitches, having them seen they saw something different. Their eyes are tuned into a little bit of inward break, and they're like, okay, I saw that. Then they see the splitter again, it locks them up. When you're just getting four seam or splitter, that's just so
No,
much easier to think.
especially if they start to figure out when the splitter's coming, right? If they start to recognize it early, you're eliminating one of only two pitches. Do
And
you
you're
have
not
any
throwing it for
theory?
strikes is another thing, right? If you're not using
Absolutely.
it as a strike pitch, it's easy to lay off. You don't have to go down in the zone and fish it.
Joel, do you have any theories on his home and away splits? Like, is this just coincidence? Like, it's so huge that you do start to wonder if it's more than coincidence, but also baseball's fucked and it literally could just be coincidence. Do you have any theories on what's going on here?
Hey, home and away always confuses me, right? Home and away, like how if you're
Especially when
so
it's away, that is so much better, right? Like
Yes.
I get the intangibles that a home crowd can bring you, the energy, the momentum, all of that stuff. But when that stuff is irrelevant and you're doing worse at home, that's when I'm like, it's an enigma. I have no idea.
It's like a Seinfeld situation where like the longer guys hold out from sex, the smarter they get,
The
and then
smarter they are, yeah.
right. So when he's away and he's away from his family and his wife, and he's like he's just focused on baseball. But when he gets home, he's getting some, and then all of a sudden he's just he's not thinking about the game. Maybe I don't know what it is,
That's
but it's like
hilarious. He's the opposite of Kevin Biggio. He does better when he's not getting sex, you know?
and it's like, is it a situation where if you're so bad at home, do you just go stay in a hotel the day before your home starts? Do you just put yourself in a road mindset, you know?
Mhm.
Um, Take a cab to the game, go in a different entrance, just do everything so it feels like you're walking into a different ballpark, and,
Yes.
and just set your mind that you're like, I'm on the road. Can't wait to get home. Long time till I get home. Won't be home for months. Never getting home. Just lie to yourself,
Yeah,
right? Lie to
this
yourself.
actually this actually could be fun. All right. So all of you grounds crew members, I want to hear your theories. What are your conspiracies on why Kevin Gausman has an over 7 ERA at the Rogers Center and a slightly above 2 on the road? It makes zero sense to me. I would love to hear your thoughts on that. We'll tackle that in mailbag, I should say. Joel, they are heading to Arizona, and we will touch on that quickly. But first, I do want to talk the All Star game really quick. Are you an All Star game guy? Personally, you know what's funny, man? I used to. So I will start with this. When baseball was deciding whether the American League or the National League had home field advantage from who won the All Star game, completely an insane way to decide that. But I did love it. I did love that insanity because the game actually meant something,
Mhm.
right? And I know that that was what they were attempting to do, is getting these players to really put the effort in. And now it's become, I mean, it's a who's who of professional baseball, which is also cool. And, like the kids love it and stuff. Personally, I don't really care to watch the game. I'll probably still watch it because I go 2 days without baseball and I start being, I start jonesing. I'm like an addict here, Joel. But are you a big All Star game guy?
In 2021, I was when we had like a lot of guys going, and we're like, we're extending line 9 Jays. They
Yeah,
play the entire starting lineup as Blue Jays.
yeah.
That was nice. I think your feelings for it usually depend on your
On
what
whether
you're saying.
Santiago Espinal is in it or not. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly, right. It's like, is this a Delabar season, or do we
Yeah.
have a bunch of players going for the right reasons? And um, hey, yeah, I am an All-Star Game fan. I do like the I like that it's just this casual, fun game where you get to point out all the amazing things that have happened to these great players over the year.
Hmm.
You get to sit and individually tell the stories. It's not about team. I'm not going in there really with team love. It's about baseball love, right? It's about seeing the best at it perform. And I agree. I like to see it competitive. I think it's the one sport that you can put an all-star game in the middle and be competitive and have them fight for it. Like we haven't real I don't off the top of my head remember too many all-star game injuries
Hmm.
where that guy was out then for the half of the season, and you're like, oh God, that all-star game, we can't have them trying. Like I don't
Yeah.
remember that incident. I remember more like, Barry Bonds being robbed by Torrey Hunter and like those types of moments. So um yeah, I'm a fan of it. I kind of do wish that it was still played for some stakes. I wish they could find a way to say, hey, this game means something. Here's how
Yeah.
Um,
And again, I will say it was a completely ridiculous way to figure out who has home field advantage for the World Series. It absolutely was.
you
But
could tell the managers were managing for that win though,
yes,
because there
they
was quite
absolutely
often
were.
the manager was a team that was in contention. They might be fighting for that World Series,
Mhm.
and you know they put out they go like we're keeping our guys in there. We're trying to win this game. Like
Because I am a home run derby guy. I do really love the showmanship of the derby. And I know this year they struggled, or it sure seems like they struggled to get guys going out for it. I know Adolis Garcia was just announced from Texas, Marcelo Zuna from Atlanta. You got Bobby Witt Jr., and you got who else is in it here? My brain's slipping. I should have.
who just recently got announced or who all
Yeah.
is going. I know Marcus Simeon got put in yesterday over Altuve because Altuve had a wrist injury.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Um, but like most of the
Oh,
guys that
Gunnar
you,
Henderson. Gunnar Henderson's who
of
we're
course,
forgetting.
yes, Gunner.
Yeah.
And for the Derby, you mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, for the Derby. Yeah, Gunnar Henderson. It's always a situation where it's like we've seen the Derby is not necessarily, you don't necessarily have to be an all-star to be in the Derby. You know, Vladdy went to the Derby, was not an all-star. So it's like,
Pete
I know
Alonso, Alec Bohm are there this year.
Alec
Bobby
Bohm for the
Witt.
Derby.
Yeah, I know, right? This is what I'm saying. Like they just the guys kept turning it down. So it's really interesting to see who was in there. Jose Ramirez is in there. I mean, obviously, deservedly so. Adolis Garcia, Teoscar Hernandez, which he should be. That's awesome.
Mhm.
That's awesome that Teoscar got in. That's exciting. And the last guy that we did not mention, I think we got them all now. Yeah, there you go. Pete Alonso. That's right. The polar bear. Any predictions?
Yes. Well, I would think that he would probably go for it again. He's
Yeah.
ferocious in these tournaments. But it's
I
really sad.
totally missed that Teoscar Hernandez got named to the home run derby. I got a horse in the race. I'm cheering for
There,
Teoscar.
that's
Yeah.
right. That's right. I think he'd do well in it because I was going to say it's a sad situation though that you don't see Judge, you don't see
Mhm.
Stan. I want to see the guys who can hit the ball 500 feet.
I know. I know. I'm the same way. And even a guy like Vladdy, he's so good in those derbies and so much fun to watch. I'd be into that. But you do see how exhausting it is. And I totally do get why if guys, let's say your shoulder is sore, right? And you're asked to do it, and you're like, I'd rather just like I'll mess around in the All-Star game, maybe take fewer swings and try and be ready for my team when I go back. Like I get why guys turn it down because it is a very physically demanding thing to be doing.
Absolutely. And I don't know, maybe they just need to find a way to do it like uh it'd be interesting if you could do like a lead up in the first half of the season where it's like these guys want to go in the home run derby. Okay, let's have this guy face off this guy this week. They have off
Mhm.
days, right? Let's have them face off and then they secure their spots. So when it comes to home run derby night, there isn't 3 rounds, right? Like if you could lower the amount, and I think it really needs to be a home run derby, but it needs to be something else along that night. Like there needs to be more than, because we just rely on 2 hours of entertainment coming from guys just swinging as hard as they can in rapid fire succession. It's slightly different this year. I believe there's a ball limit,
Yeah,
right? So you can't just like Vladdy it when like I don't care if it's still in the air, I'm still hitting them. Just keep rapid fire throwing, and I'm just
yeah,
like, it used to be a rule where you couldn't throw the next one until your home run had landed,
yeah,
and Vladdy's just like, they're not calling that. They're not. No one's ever been penalized for it. Let's go for it. Let's cheat.
which
Well,
is
and then
hilarious.
he would
I mean,
just
there's a
swing
million
that.
dollars on the line, right? Like that's the thing with some of these guys. You look at a dude like Bobby Witt Jr., who's making, you know, I know he got that big contract, but it's mostly backloaded. So, you know, I need to look it up, but I think he's making 3 or 4 million this year. So like $1 million, like that's a pretty big bonus, right? Like that's
I
a
think
30%
Pete,
increase in your pay.
Pete was winning it on his rookie contract.
Yeah,
It was the most money he would make in the year came from the Derby.
from the Derby.
In his
Yeah.
like, I'm pretty sure his first win, he made more money at the Derby than he did on his salary that season. So, yeah, some people are look at that opportunity and they go, "I'd like that $1 million."
All right, Joel, I know that you have some big wig meetings to get to here.
Well,
So, very
big
exciting
win,
stuff.
yes.
And we might even have some news for everyone who's been following along on this show that Joel's been writing and we've been helping out with. So, fingers crossed there that we on maybe Tuesday can be like, hey, guess what, gang? This is what's going on. But so on that, we will wrap this up here with the fact that the Toronto Blue Jays heading to Arizona for the first time since I think it was 2016, the last time that the Jays played in Arizona. So the Diamondbacks and the Blue Jays, of course, everyone is well aware that we're going to see old friends Lourdes Gurriel Jr. and Gabriel Moreno, and the pitching matchups should be interesting. This game tonight, it's going to be Rin Nelson against Yariel Rodriguez. And I'm pretty excited about Wyrod, man. Like, Yariel has been excellent. And I know we've talked about Cuban baseball players before and that they have dealt with so much life shit that whenever an obstacle comes their way in baseball, it never seems like a big deal. And I know Yariel's had a few setbacks this season and has literally rebounded right back and given absolutely dominant performances. Where are you at on Yariel right now, buddy? Like, do you think that we've got ourselves a good one?
Yeah, oh yeah. It's a real shame that the team wasn't what it was set out to be because I felt like his addition would have been really, really important to this team. Like if he was here last year, that would have been, covering for Manoa and his faltering all season. If Yariel would have been on that team, oh my God. But now we're matched up with this season and his value is just a little bit wasted because we're not as competitive as we want to be. But I really think that he's got what it takes. He's got the mindset. You can tell that he loves the game. We'll see if he tips his cap to Lourdes, another fellow Cuban when they're up because he did to Jordan when they played Houston. But I like him. I like the mix. I like the stuff. I like the fact that we brought him in maybe as this slightly expensive bullpen piece to now be this really cheap, great deal starting pitcher. And the fact that we were able to see a reliever in Japan and go, he hasn't been given the chance to truly see if he's a starter yet. And to see that if he can be a 6, 7 inning guy, there's 10 strikeout games that come along with it. And if you can do that, you can be special in this league. If one out every single inning is a strikeout, then the opponents only have 2 outs to score against you. And that's really what it seems like when Yariel's on his game.
I couldn't agree more. I'm really excited about Yariel. I do think that there are obviously going to be some bumps in the road. I mean, he is brand new to Major League Baseball, but he is 27. He's faced Major League talent, maybe not quite equivalent, but you know what? Like Japanese baseball is very high level stuff. He's pitched in the WBC, so he has faced high level opponents before. Although, of course, Major League Baseball is a different animal altogether. But I'm excited about him, man. I really think that as a guy in that number 5 hole for us, he's going to be great, and he's a much better option than a Bowden Francis. And then tomorrow night's game is a late one. 10:10 is when it starts. That's going to be Jose Barrios versus Yanier Diaz, and then Yusei Kikuchi on Sunday versus Zach Galen. So this is where we're going to close things off. Okay, we mentioned it off the top. The first real trade that goes down for the Toronto Blue Jays. Who do you think is going to be the first guy moved? So I think it's most likely going to be Yusei Kikuchi. And the reason I say that is he's healthy right now. He's had 2 dominant starts in a row. Jimmy Garcia is still on the IL, and I think we're going to need to see some positive progress from him before he gets moved. I think teams are going to want to know that he's healthy before they go out and get a very good reliever in Garcia. I think Justin Turner is probably a guy that's going to be moved much closer to the deadline. So where are you at? I'm curious on your thoughts on who is going to be the first domino to fall for this Toronto Blue Jays team.
I tend to agree with you on Kikuchi just because of the uptick last start with his 13 strikeouts. You're really hoping for something good against Arizona because eyes are on Kikuchi right now, and that last start that he had really probably has his interest peak. You don't want him to have a bad start now and kind of lower that value that he's built up. But I really think that that's the piece. Starting pitching is always sought after commodity. It's like a bat could fit some places. A legit starting pitcher could go on every contender. Every contender could use another lefty, especially a lefty that throws the way Kikuchi does. So yeah, I feel like he's
He's
the
probably the
value
guy.
there is.
And honestly, Joel, I do find myself thinking, you know what, some of these fringe teams or teams that are just in the wild card right now, it makes a lot of sense to bolster their starting rotation a couple weeks before the trade deadline. Even if you need to give a slightly higher prospect, give yourself that extra runway where you can accumulate those extra wins maybe and bump yourself up into the top wild card spot where you've got home field advantage. There's a lot of reasons why bolstering your starting staff a little early makes sense. And with Kikuchi coming off of, I don't know if was 13 Ks his career high. If it wasn't, it was pretty freaking darn close. An incredible performance from Yusei. Grounds crew, drop a name below. Who do you think is going to be the first Toronto Blue Jay domino to fall? Who is going to be the guy that they move? You know what? A guy that I think is going to get moved that hasn't been mentioned. Trevor Richards is another guy who could be the first domino to fall. Although the one thing I do find myself thinking with Trevor Richards is if he goes, who the frick is pitching out of this Blue Jays bullpen?
If we lose bullpen pieces, I don't even understand how bad it could end up looking. And yeah, the other thing about Kikuchi is that the money is such a good, like, you're on the hook for 5 million if you pick him up, right? So it's just like there's a difference between, hey, we got this really confident guy, but it's another 12.5 million. The Jays need to cover a little bit of that. Like the fact that this is a really solid pitcher will really help you down the stretch, and the fact that you're not paying, you still have more financial freedom to probably go get somebody else might mean that you get a little bit more back because they're not having to pay the financial uh compensation. They don't have to pay out that player and bump themselves up to a new bracket or anything like that. It's $5 million. So when are you going to be able to add that much for very little on your payroll? That seems like a really good, really good piece.
Couldn't agree more. Best of luck with the big wig meetings you got coming up today, my friend. I can't wait to hear all about it. I know that you're actually sitting down with Kurt Russell, which is freaking mind blowing. So best of luck with that. I know I'll be bothering you a little later on. I'm also going to do some self promotion here, everybody. So I am performing at the Corner Comedy Club in Toronto tonight. You can get your tickets at the Corner Comedy Club. I'm doing 20 minutes here on the early show, 8 p.m. So come check it out. Also have Baseball Town coming up at the Comedy Bar Thursday. Our guests are going to be the Looney Dog Kings in their hot dog uniforms. Of course, they're wearing the suits. We've got on our panel Ben Schulman, play-by-play announcer for the Blue Jays on the radio. We've got Julia Cruz of MLB.com, and then rounding things off, the one and the only producer for Sportsnet, Chris Black at Down to Black on Twitter. Some of the best threads and breakdowns of stats available is coming from Mr. Black. So it is going to be an excellent show. I will drop tickets for that into the comment section here. Joel, always a pleasure, my man. Best of luck. Take care, gang.